The first sound I heard wasn't the wind. It wasn't the crickets. It was a laugh. Thin, sharp, too close to my window, like a child trying not to be heard but failing. I froze in bed, every muscle tight, waiting for it to come again. But the night held its breath. Only the trees shifted in the dark, their branches scraping like fingernails against the house. That laugh didn't belong here. Not in this silence. Not in this forest. I should tell you, I hadn't planned on coming back. The house was supposed to stay empty, rotting at the edge of these woods. But after the letter came, after the lawyer's call, I found myself driving down that long gravel road, listening to the tires crunch too loudly, like they were warning me away. And still, when I stepped out, it felt like something was already waiting. The second night was worse. I thought maybe I'd dreamed that laugh, some leftover memory tangled up with the creaks of this old house. But when the sun went down again, the silence carried weight, like the whole forest was leaning closer to listen. I left the window cracked for air. The crickets hummed their usual rhythm, steady, hypnotic, then tapped just once. A sharp little knock on the wall near my bed. I sat up, listening hard. Nothing, then again, tap. Higher this time, closer to the window frame. I pulled the curtain back in one sudden motion, but the yard lay empty under the pale wash of moonlight. The trees swayed, their shadows broken and twitching on the grass. My pulse hammered in my throat. I told myself it could have been a branch, a loose shutter, anything ordinary. But when I lowered the curtain, I caught it. Movement at the edge of the woods, small, too small to be a man, in the head. It looked wrong. Too round, too heavy for the body that carried it. I blinked and it was gone. The shadows stitched themselves back together. I should have gone outside right then, checked the yard, proved to myself it was nothing. But I couldn't make my legs move. I just sat there clutching the curtain, listening. That was when the whisper came. Soft, drifting in through the open crack of the window. Watching. A single word stretched thin, almost lost in the night, and then silence so thick it roared in my ears. The next morning I searched the yard. I expected to find footprints, maybe a broken branch. Anything to prove what I'd seen wasn't just my imagination. But the grass lay flat and untouched, damp with dew like no one had ever crossed it. Still, something felt wrong. The silence clung to the house even in daylight. No birdsong, no insects buzzing. Just a low hum in my ears, the kind you hear when the power cuts out and you realize how loud the world usually is. I tried to distract myself, unpacking, cleaning, sorting through boxes left in the attic. Dust coated everything, but the air up there was heavier, like the house was holding its breath. I found one box that didn't belong, not my family's. Inside were yellowed newspaper clippings, local stories about strange sightings in the woods. Missing pets, children claiming to see the round-headed ones. The dates stretched back decades. As I sifted through the papers, the floor creaked beneath me. Once, twice. Slow, deliberate. I froze. The attic stairs groaned as if someone was climbing, but I was already up there alone. My breath caught in my throat, and in that quiet I heard it again. Soft laughter drifting just beyond the attic door. This time it wasn't distant. It was right there on the other side. I pressed my ear to the wood, barely breathing. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then in a chorus of high-pitched voices, whispering all at once. Let us in. The words slithered through the cracks, overlapping, echoing. Impossible to pin to a single throat. I stumbled back, knocking over the box. The papers scattered, fluttering down the stairs. And just like that, the voices stopped. The silence fell heavy again, pressing against my chest. I didn't open that door. Not then. That night I left every light on in the house. It didn't help. The shadows just grew sharper, clinging to the corners, trembling with every flicker of the old bulbs. I tried the television for noise, but the screen only spat static. No channels, no signal, just the crackle like 1,000 tiny mouths whispering all at once. I turned it off, but the ringing in my ears stayed. At some point, I must have drifted near sleep on the couch. That's when I heard it, footsteps on the porch. Light uneven, like children playing a game. The boards creaked under their weight, moving back and forth, circling. I held my breath, staring at the door, waiting for the knock. None came. Instead, the doorknob rattled. Once, twice, slowly, as if testing. I whispered to myself, "It's just raccoons, it's just raccoons." but the lie tasted sour in my mouth. Raccoons don't whisper, because that's what followed. A hiss of words pressed tight against the wood. "We see you." I clamped my hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. My pulse thudded so loud I thought they'd hear it. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, silence. The porch went still. The night outside held its breath. I sat there for what felt like hours, waiting. When I finally dared to peek through the window, there was nothing. Just the trees swaying, their branches tapping the glass like fingers. But in the reflection, I could have sworn I saw something else. A round shape, bulging. Just behind me. I spun, heart in my throat. Empty room. Yet the air still carried the faintest echo of that whisper, so close it brushed my ear. I didn't sleep after that. I sat with my back to the wall, staring at the door until dawn. When the light finally broke through the blinds, it felt thin, weak, like sunlight painted on paper. I forced myself outside, needing proof that something had stood there. The porch looked the same as always, weathered boards and peeling paint. But when I crouched down, I saw it. Faint impressions in the dust, like footprints. Small. Too small. Bare with toes splayed wide. There were many of them circling the door in uneven loops. My stomach turned. I snapped a picture with my phone, but when I checked the gallery, the image was warped. The footprints blurred as if the lens couldn't focus on them, as if they didn't want to be seen. The rest of the day passed in a haze. I tried calling a neighbor, but the line just crackled with static. I tried the radio, only dead air. Even the clock on the wall ticked out of rhythm, stuttering like a broken heartbeat. By evening, the dread had sunk deep enough that I almost packed and left. Almost. But something held me here. A pull like the forest itself was breathing me in. As the sky darkened, I caught myself pacing, every creak of the floorboard setting my nerves on edge. Then it came again, a sound from outside. Not laughter this time. Singing children's voices faint, carrying on the wind. A melody without words, rising and falling like a nursery rhyme half remembered. The kind of tune that should have been innocent, but bent wrong in the dark. I stepped to the window, heart hammering. The forest stood black and endless, yet the song drifted from within, weaving between the trees, and then another sound, closer. A whisper sliding beneath the melody, curling around the edges of my thoughts. Don't hide. The lights flickered once, twice, before plunging the room into darkness. Darkness pressed against the windows like a living thing. I lit a candle, its flame trembling with every draft, throwing long shadows that twisted across the walls. The singing had stopped, but silence felt heavier now, too heavy, as if it were listening back. I tried to convince myself to leave, grab my keys, run to the car, but my body wouldn't move. It was like the air itself had thickened around me, rooting me in place. Then came the scratching. Faint at first, like a mouse trapped in the walls. But it grew louder, sharper, deliberate, nails dragging along the wooden boards. The sound traveled, circling me, first behind the couch, then along the ceiling. Then, right beneath the floor, following my footsteps as I paced, I pressed my ear to the ground. A mistake. On the other side of the floorboards, I heard breathing. Small, shallow, quick, as if a child was crouched in the crawl space waiting. I staggered back, nearly knocking over the candle. My chest felt tight, my pulse a drumbeat in my throat. That was when the whisper came again. Not outside this time, but from the dark corner of the room. "You hear us now?" I spun toward the sound, candle raised. Nothing there. Just shadows quivering against the walls. Then the doorknob turned. Slowly, carefully, metal clicking under unseen fingers. I held my breath, every part of me screaming to run. But I couldn't. The knob turned halfway, stopped. Silence stretched thin, taut like a wire about to snap. And then, knock. 3 quick taps. Not from the door, but from inside the wall right beside me. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I sat in the kitchen with every light blazing, clutching the only weapon I had, a rusted fireplace poker I found by the hearth. My hands ached from gripping it, but letting go felt impossible. Like the second I did, something would take me. When dawn finally bled through the curtains, the fear didn't ease. It only changed shape. In daylight, I could pretend the whispers were dreams, that the footprints were tricks of shadow. But I knew better. I felt it in the hollow space of my chest. I forced myself into the woods, thinking if I confronted whatever this was, I could end it. The trees loomed tall, their branches clawing at the sky. Every step crunched too loudly on the fallen leaves. I kept expecting to see someone dart between the trunks, but the forest stayed still, watching. Then I found it. A clearing. In the center stood a shack, sagging, half swallowed by vines. Its windows were dark holes, its door barely hanging by a hinge. My breath caught as I realized I'd been here before, when I was a child, dared by friends to step closer. Back then, I'd run after 5 seconds, laughing to hide the fear. Now the air around it felt colder, heavier. I approached slowly, every instinct screaming to turn back. The door creaked as the wind nudged it open, revealing nothing but shadows inside. And then, sound. A soft giggle, high-pitched. From within, my skin crawled. I raised the poker, stepped 1 foot over the threshold. The floor groaned beneath me, echoing through the hollow space. That's when I noticed the marks on the walls. Scratches, hundreds of them. Small handprints smeared in dirt, circling the room like some frantic ritual. And in the silence between my heartbeats, a voice breathed against my ear. Though the room was empty, you came back. I stumbled back from the threshold, nearly tripping over the roots curling up through the floor. My chest heaved, but the shack's shadows seemed to lean forward, following me. For a second, I swore I saw movement in the dark. Small shapes shifting, ducking out of sight, round heads catching the glint of daylight. I should have run. I should have left the woods entirely. But something pulled at me. A thread knotted deep in my chest, tugging me closer instead of away. My hands shook as I raised the poker like it could actually help. Inside, the air was damp, thick with mold. Every step stirred dust, making the floor groan like something beneath it was alive. The giggle came again, this time from the corner. I spun toward it. Empty space, nothing but rotted boards. Then it came from the opposite corner, then behind me. The sound circled me, high-pitched, wrong. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The laughter wasn't in the air anymore. It was in my head, echoing against my skull. That's when I saw the drawings. Carved into the wood with something sharp, lining the walls from floor to ceiling. Crude figures, their bodies stick-thin, their heads grotesquely large, crowded together, dozens of them, their hollow eyes gouged deep into the grain. My stomach lurched. I backed away, but my foot hit something on the floor. A box, old metal rusted shut. My heart hammered as I crouched, pried it open. Inside lay scraps of clothing, tiny shirts, torn shoes, brittle with age. And bones. Small ones. Too small. The laughter cut off. The silence hit like a blow. And then, in that void, a single voice, clear and close, whispered my name. I ran from the shack, crashing through the undergrowth like a hunted animal. Branches clawed at my arms, tore at my shirt, but I didn't stop. The forest seemed endless, every tree the same, until at last the house appeared through the thinning brush. I slammed the door behind me, locked it, and pressed my back against the wood. My breath came in ragged bursts, the poker still clutched in my hand. I told myself I was safe inside these walls. But deep down, I knew the walls weren't protection. They were a trap. As the evening fell, I tried distracting myself, rifling through the old papers I'd knocked loose in the attic. Most were too faded to read, but one article caught my eye. A headline from 1963, "Local children vanish in woods. No trace found." The photograph beneath it showed the very shack I had just left. Door hanging by the same crooked hinge. The edges of the paper trembled in my hands. My chest tightened. That was when I heard it again, footsteps on the porch. Slow, deliberate. I gripped the poker, but this time I didn't wait. I yanked the curtain back, ready to confront whoever or whatever was out there. Nothing. Empty porch. And yet, the sound didn't stop. The footsteps kept circling, scraping across the boards. But outside, the wood remained still. I realized then, with a sick twist in my gut, the sound wasn't out there. It was inside the walls. The boards rattled around me, footsteps racing through the hollow spaces like dozens of tiny feet. They skittered up the stairs, across the ceiling, down into the basement, faster and faster, until the whole house trembled with their movement. I dropped the poker and clamped my hands over my ears. But the noise drilled straight through my skull. And beneath the thunder of feet came a new sound. Whispering, layered, overlapping, too many voices to count. One rose above the rest. sliding close to the side of my face as if lips brushed my skin. We never left. The house shook with the sound, tiny feet pounding in the walls, scurrying across the ceiling, racing beneath the floor. I staggered through the hallway, clutching at my head, certain the plaster would split open and spill them into the room. "Stop," I shouted, voice breaking, but the noise only grew louder, drowning me. I stumbled into the living room where the candle I'd left earlier had burned down to a crooked stub. Its weak glow stretched shadows long across the walls. And in those shadows I swore I saw them. Shapes, small, hunched, heads too large, too heavy, darting along the edges of the light, vanishing when I tried to focus. The voices rose with the footsteps, high, shrill whispers that tangled together until they sounded like chanting. I couldn't make out the words at first, just a cadence that gnawed at my bones. Then slowly the meaning bled through. "Join us, join us, join us," my knees buckled. I pressed my palms to my ears, but the chant was inside me now, vibrating in my skull, echoing in the hollow space behind my eyes. The room tilted. My vision swam, and then silence. Sudden, absolute. I lifted my head, gasping. The house stood still again, too still. Even the candle's flame froze, unmoving. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps on the inside of the wall, inches from my face. I stumbled back, heart hammering as cracks spread across the plaster. Dust sifted down. Something was trying to get through. The cracks widened. Tiny fingers pushed out, pale and thin, wriggling through the broken wall. Then another hand, and another, dozens of them. I screamed, lunged for the poker, and swung wildly, smashing the wall. The fingers retracted instantly, the cracks sealing shut as if they'd never been there. The room was whole again, silent, empty. But my breathing came ragged, my arms trembling. And in the faint ring of silence, one voice whispered, softer than all the rest, "You're already ours." I couldn't stay in the house any longer. By dawn, I was already throwing things into a bag. Phone, flashlight, the rusted poker. My hands shook so badly I could barely zip it shut. I told myself I'd drive straight into town, find someone, anyone, and never come back. But when I opened the front door, my stomach dropped. The porch was covered in footprints, hundreds of them pressed into the dust and dew. Tiny, bare, splayed toes circling again and again, overlapping until the boards looked bruised. They hadn't just come in the night. They had waited. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. My only thought was the car. If I could make it there, I could escape. I bolted down the steps across the yard, the bag slamming against my side. My breath tore in and out, ragged. The keys dug into my palm, but the forest was alive. The air pulsed with whispers, so many voices tangled together that the words dissolved into noise. The trees shivered, though there was no wind, and between the trunks I caught glimpses, small figures ducking low, darting just out of sight, their swollen heads bobbing as they moved. I ran faster. The car came into view, silver beneath the pale light. Relief surged until I heard it. Laughter, not one voice. Many. Rising all around me. I reached the car, fumbled the keys, dropped them, cursed, scrambled to scoop them up. My fingers wouldn't work, slick with sweat. The laughter grew sharper, closer, circling. The grass bent as though tiny feet pressed down, though nothing was there. Finally, the key slid into the lock. I yanked the door open, collapsed into the driver's seat, and slammed it shut. For a moment, the glass and steel felt like a sanctuary. Then, tap, from the back window. I froze. Slowly turned my head. There was nothing outside, just the trees. But the glass fogged, as if someone's breath pressed against it from the other side, and written there in the condensation, 4 shaky letters. Mine. I wiped the window with my sleeve, but the word didn't smear. It was inside the glass, etched into the fog as though the breath that made it had seeped through. My chest heaved, lungs scraping for air that no longer felt real. I jammed the key into the ignition, twisted. The engine coughed, sputtered, died. I tried again, harder, my hands slick on the metal. Nothing, just a wheeze, then silence, and then the laughter. It started faint, drifting from the trees, but quickly multiplied, circling the car. Tiny voices, high and sharp, overlapping until it was a shrill chorus. They tapped the glass, light quick, dozens of fingers drumming across the windows. The car shuddered under the sound, as if surrounded by a storm of invisible hands. I slammed my palms against the steering wheel, screaming, "Leave me alone!" My voice cracked, drowned out by their glee. The windshield fogged again, breath blooming across the inside of the glass, though I was the only one there. Shapes appeared in the condensation. Round heads, wide eyes carved by fingers unseen, grinning mouths too large for their faces. One after another, they smeared across the glass until I was staring into a wall of distorted reflections. The locks clicked. My stomach lurched. I hadn't touched them. One by one, the doors unlocked with slow, deliberate clicks. No. My voice was a whimper now. I yanked the lock back up, but another clicked down. Back and forth, the car became a game board, and I was the piece. The laughter swelled, shrieking, triumphant. Then, in the brief silence between their giggles, a single voice, calm, steady, spoke right behind me, as though it were seated in the back seat all along. Drive deeper. I froze. My skin crawled. Slowly, my eyes lifted to the rearview mirror. For a moment, I saw nothing but my own pale, trembling face. And then, just beyond my shoulder, the faint outline of a round head, leaning forward. I bolted from the car before I could think, before the thing in the back seat leaned any closer. The night air hit me like ice, sharp in my lungs. My legs moved without direction, pounding across the yard into the tree line, deeper and deeper into the dark. The forest swallowed me whole. Branches whipped my face, tore at my clothes, but I didn't stop. Behind me, the laughter followed. Dozens of voices weaving through the trees. Not chasing, herding. The deeper I went, the clearer it became. Their footsteps were everywhere, quick, light, skittering just out of sight. To my left, to my right, ahead, behind. I couldn't outrun them. They were leading me somewhere. I stumbled into another clearing, gasping. At first I thought it was the same shack, but no. The structure here was older, bigger. Stone walls crumbled with moss, the remains of something that must have been built decades ago. An orphanage, maybe, or a hospital. Moonlight cut through the broken roof, illuminating the ground. My breath caught when I saw the carvings, those same stick-thin bodies with enormous heads etched into the stone. Hundreds of them. And then the singing started again, that same nursery rhyme without words, rising from the shadows of the ruin. I pressed my hands to my ears, but the sound vibrated through the stone, up through the soles of my feet, worming into my chest. My heart hammered in rhythm with their song. Shapes began to emerge in the moonlight, small bodies hunched at the edge of the clearing, their swollen heads tilting in unison. Their eyes glowed faintly, not with light, but with reflection like animals caught in a beam. One of them stepped forward, closer than the rest. I saw its mouth stretch into a grin too wide, skin cracking at the corners, and in a voice that was both childlike and ancient it said, "You already belong to us." The others echoed, a chorus that shook the leaves, the ground, my bones. Belong, belong, belong. I staggered backward, but the circle had already closed. Their small bodies swayed in rhythm with that word. Belong, 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 like the forest itself was chanting through them. My flashlight slipped from my grip and rolled across the stone floor. Its beam skittered over their faces, round skulls too large for their thin necks, skin pale and stretched tight, eyes reflecting cold light like wet glass. Each grin tore wider as the light passed. I tried to scream, but the sound stuck in my throat. The chant drowned everything, worming into my head, vibrating through my teeth. Then suddenly it stopped. The silence crashed down so heavy I thought I'd gone deaf. My own heartbeat thundered in the void. The shapes stood still, heads tilted, waiting. A single one stepped forward, no taller than a child of 7. Its feet dragged slightly, its swollen head lolling as though it were too heavy to carry. When it spoke, its lips barely moved. Do you remember? The words punched the air from my lungs. My vision blurred, memories I hadn't touched in years clawing to the surface. Nights as a child in this very forest. Dares whispered between friends, running when the laughter first reached us. I remembered something else. A game we never spoke of, a voice in the dark that had whispered my name even then. The figure's hand reached out toward me, small and pale. My body shook, but I couldn't move. It was as if every muscle had frozen. Behind it, the others leaned forward in perfect unison. Their voices rose, soft this time, almost coaxing. Come home. The ground shifted under me. Or maybe I was the one shifting, stumbling closer without meaning to. My feet moved against my will, drawn by their rhythm, their gaze. And for the first time I wondered if I had ever left. Their chant seeped into me, A vibration more than a sound, rattling my bones from the inside. My vision swam. Black spots blooming across the edges, but their shapes stayed sharp, clear, as if carved into the dark. Come home. The small one stood closest, its hand still outstretched. My breath came in shallow gasps. I tried to tell myself I was dreaming, that I would wake in my bed, that none of this was real. But the cold air, the ache in my legs, the dirt beneath my nails, everything screamed that it was. My hand rose before I could stop it. Trembling, reaching, the voices softened, almost tender now. Laughter folded into whispers, whispers folded into lullabies. For a moment it felt like relief, like surrender. My fingertips brushed its palm. The world flickered. I was standing in the shack again. The carvings on the wall, the box of bones at my feet, my own breath ragged in the stale air. Then another flicker. I was in the house. Candlelight, shadows crawling, tiny fingers pushing through the plaster. Another flicker. The car, the word etched in fog. Mine. Each scene bled into the next, looping, folding as though I was trapped in every moment at once. My ears rang with voices layered upon voices until I couldn't tell where they ended and I began. You never left, they said. You were always ours, I screamed, or maybe I only thought I did. The sound never left my throat. When the darkness lifted, I was back in the clearing. The circle of them still swayed, heads bobbing in rhythm, eyes catching the faintest glint of moonlight, but the one in front was gone. I looked down. My hand was small, pale. The skin stretched tight over a round skull that felt too heavy for my neck. Around me, the chant rose again, and this time I was part of it. My voice blended with theirs, high-pitched and sharp, carried into the trees like a nursery rhyme with no end. And in the silence between the words, something else whispered from deep inside me, in a voice that sounded like mine but wasn't. I told you, I never left.